Did you know that the way you start your morning, what you read, and even how you sit in silence could be rewiring your brain every single day? If you want to be smarter, sharper, and more in control of your life, you need to do this one thing first: master your daily habits. Not flashy routines or overhyped trends, but the timeless, tested practices that the Stoics used to sharpen their minds and steel their character. In this video, we're diving into 7 powerful Stoic habits that can literally reshape how you think, react, and grow, starting with how you wake up tomorrow. Let's get into it. Number 1. Wake with purpose. Starting the day with Stoic clarity. There's something powerful about the early hours of the morning. The world hasn't fully woken up yet, the streets are quieter, and the noise of the day hasn't crept into your mind. Have you ever stepped outside during sunrise, coffee in hand, and felt like for just a moment, you were ahead of the world? That's not just romanticism, that's clarity, that's power, and that's exactly what the Stoics believed. If you win the morning, you set the tone for your entire life. But let's be honest, most of us don't wake up with purpose. We wake up with alarms we snooze too many times, with phones already buzzing, minds racing with stress before our feet hit the floor. The average American adult checks their phone within 5 minutes of waking up, not to learn, not to connect, but to scroll aimlessly. And we wonder why anxiety trails us through the day. The Stoics had a better way. Marcus Aurelius, arguably one of the busiest men in history, a Roman emperor, started his mornings not by rushing into battle plans or court matters, but with inner reflection. In meditations, he reminded himself that he wasn't born for comfort or indulgence, but to rise, serve, and lead. That morning reminder wasn't just philosophy. It was armor. Waking with purpose doesn't mean checking off a to-do list at 6 a.m. It means rising with intention. It means asking, what kind of person do I want to be today? It's a short pause, a deep breath, a brief journaling prompt, or even just sitting silently and deciding not to be pulled by every external demand. When you do that, you create space in your mind. You become the author of your day, not just the character swept along by chaos. Think back to the days you felt the most alive, the ones where everything just clicked. Maybe it was your first day at a new job. Maybe it was the day of a long-awaited trip. You probably remember waking up earlier than usual, heart-pounding, mind-focused. That wasn't an accident. It was the result of waking up with purpose. The goal here is to design more days like that, on purpose, not by accident. Now ask yourself, what if every morning could feel like the start of something meaningful? What if, instead of chasing motivation, you built a mindset that generated it automatically? That's not hype, that's Stoicism, and it starts the moment you open your eyes. Number 2. Control your inputs. Guarding your mind against noise. We live in the noisiest time in human history. There's always another tweet, another notification, another ad trying to convince you you're not enough. Unless you buy, click, react, or compare. Our minds are constantly under siege. And what we often forget is this: what you allow in shapes what comes out. Your focus, your thoughts, your emotions, they're all being hijacked unless you take control of what you consume. Now here's the problem. Most of us don't even realize how much input we're exposed to. The average person consumes over 34 gigabytes of content per day. That's equivalent to reading 100,000 words daily. And most of that isn't inspiring or educational. It's fear-driven news, performative social media, endless reels of other people's lives. We're mentally bloated, yet spiritually starving. The Stoics were ruthless when it came to protecting their inner peace. Epictetus said, if you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Why? Because improvement often means stepping away from the popular noise, the trends, the gossip, the fake urgency, and tuning into what actually matters. They didn't need constant information because they relied on wisdom, not noise. You wouldn't eat garbage every day and expect to feel energized. Yet many of us do that mentally. Every headline, every scroll, every argument online, it's like feeding your mind junk food. You feel full, but you're malnourished. And over time, that creates stress, fatigue, insecurity, even depression. Do you remember life before smartphones were in our pockets 24/7? Maybe it was a road trip in your early 20s. Maybe it was after-school hours spent riding bikes, not endlessly scrolling. There was space in your brain. There was boredom, but also imagination. That wasn't a simpler time, it was a quieter time. And in that quiet, you could actually hear yourself think. Imagine creating that silence again, not permanently, but intentionally. Turning off news alerts. Taking social media off your home screen. Not responding to texts the moment they arrive. You'd begin to notice something strange. Your thoughts get sharper. Your emotions become calmer. Your focus returns. That's not a fluke, it's the return of your mental sovereignty. So the question becomes, what are you allowing into your mind every day without question? And what would happen if you started guarding those gates like your peace depended on it, because it does? Number 3. Reflect daily. Journaling to sharpen self-awareness. In a world moving at 1,000 miles per hour, the most radical thing you can do is stop and think. Not scroll, not react, but truly reflect. That's why the Stoics journaled, not for aesthetics or productivity hacks, but to see themselves clearly. And in doing so, they made better decisions, strengthened their character, and kept their egos in check. Journaling isn't just a writing exercise. It's a mirror, one that doesn't lie to you. Marcus Aurelius's Meditations wasn't written to impress others. It was a collection of brutally honest notes to himself. He wrote about his flaws, his struggles, and his principles, because he knew that unchecked minds tend to drift into delusion. When you reflect daily, you begin to notice patterns. Not just in your habits, but in your thinking. You catch the moments where fear disguised itself as logic. You spot the times when you acted from ego, not reason. And that awareness? That's power. That's how change begins, not with motivation, but with truth. Let's bring it closer to home. Have you ever stumbled across an old note, a journal entry, or even a Facebook memory from years ago and thought, wow, I forgot I used to think like that? That feeling, part embarrassment, part nostalgia, is a beautiful sign of growth. But what if you could track that growth intentionally? What if you didn't wait years to notice your progress? Think back to when you were a teenager or in your early 20s. So many thoughts raced through your mind. You had dreams, doubts, moments of rebellion or restlessness. What if someone had handed you a journal back then and said, write it down? Trust me, it'll make sense later. That's the gift journaling offers now. You may not understand every entry in the moment, but you're building a map of your inner world. A map that becomes invaluable in times of uncertainty. Now imagine waking up every day and writing down 3 simple things. What you're grateful for, what you're struggling with, and who you want to be today. No fluff, just raw thoughts. Over time, those entries become data. Not for others, but for your evolution. Curious yet? Because here's the twist. Journaling doesn't just reveal who you are. It shows you who you could be. And that gap between the two? That's your growth edge. It's waiting for you, pen in hand. Number 4. Seek discomfort. Training the mind through voluntary hardship. We all love comfort, warm showers, fast food, soft couches, entertainment on demand. And there's nothing wrong with enjoying life's pleasures. But what happens when comfort becomes our default setting? What happens when we're so shielded from discomfort that the smallest inconvenience feels like a crisis? That's where Stoicism offers a brutal but freeing truth. Comfort is a drug, and hardship is the antidote, if you choose it voluntarily. Seneca once practiced poverty on purpose. He'd wear ragged clothes, eat simple food, and sleep on the ground, not because he had to, but because he wanted to remind himself of something vital. That he could survive it. In his own words, set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself all the while, is this the condition I feared? That wasn't self-punishment. That was mental strength training. Most of us have never intentionally chosen discomfort. We tolerate it when we're forced to, traffic jams, breakups, illness, but very few people choose to wake up early for a cold shower, to walk when they could drive, or to fast when food is right in front of them. But here's the secret. The more you expose yourself to difficulty by choice, the less you fear it when it arrives uninvited. Think about your life for a second. When was the last time you did something hard on purpose? Maybe it was your first day in the gym after years of avoiding it. Maybe it was telling someone the truth you'd been holding back. Or maybe, just maybe, it was choosing to sit alone in silence, away from your phone, facing your thoughts. Those moments? They made you stronger. They didn't break you, they built you. Now think back even further. Remember how much you used to endure without even thinking of it as hardship. Climbing trees barefoot, riding your bike until your legs burned, staying outside until dark without snacks or air conditioning. There was pain, sure, but also resilience. We were tougher than we realized, and we didn't need constant luxury to feel alive. Somewhere along the way, we lost that edge. Voluntary discomfort is how we get it back. It might start small, choosing a cold shower, waking up an hour earlier, walking instead of driving, or skipping a meal. But each of those choices plants a seed. A quiet inner voice begins to whisper, "I can handle this. I'm stronger than I thought." And over time, that voice drowns out fear, entitlement, and self-pity. So ask yourself, what could you gain from doing something hard on purpose this week? Not to impress others, but to prove something to yourself. Blank. Underscore, blank. Number 5. Read with intention. Feeding your mind with wisdom, not distraction. We've never had more information at our fingertips, yet people are more confused, anxious, and distracted than ever before. Why? Because we're consuming endlessly, not learning deliberately. Scrolling is not studying. Watching is not wisdom. In a world obsessed with quantity, Stoicism urges us to return to quality, especially when it comes to what we read. The Stoics didn't read for entertainment. They read for transformation. Marcus Aurelius quoted Epictetus in his journal, not because he wanted to show off, but because he was actively shaping his mind. Seneca wrote letters filled with book recommendations, but always emphasized the importance of depth over volume. "You must linger among a limited number of master thinkers," he said, "and digest their works." Now let's fast forward to today. How many of us read books and articles just to say we've read them? We skim headlines, binge self-help, devour productivity hacks, and then forget everything the next day. Reading without reflection is just another distraction dressed up as progress. Real reading, the kind that changes you, feels like a conversation with your future self. Think back to a book that actually changed you. Not one you were assigned in school, but one that made you pause, reread, underline, question, and maybe even cry. Maybe it was something like Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, or Meditations, or even a quote you stumbled on in a random moment. Those moments are rare, but unforgettable. And they're the reason intentional reading matters. Remember being a kid at the library? The smell of the pages, the quiet aisles, the excitement of discovering a story that felt like it was written just for you. That kind of focused attention is rare now. We're drowning in tweets and listicles. But you can get that magic back, not by reading more, but by reading better. So how do you read with intention? Start by choosing fewer books, but better ones. Read slowly. Reread. Take notes. Ask, how does this apply to my life? What am I being invited to change? And just as important, read with the humility to admit you don't know everything yet. Wisdom doesn't come from owning books. It comes from living what they teach. Here's something to ponder. If your mind is like a garden, what are you planting in it every time you read? Is it shallow entertainment or deep roots of wisdom? Blank. Underscore, blank. Number 6. Silence and solitude. Creating space for deep thought. In a world that never shuts up, silence is becoming one of the most powerful and rare forms of clarity. We're always connected, always pinged, always one swipe away from noise. And yet, deep down, we crave it. That quiet space where the mind stops racing, where we're not reacting, not performing, just being. The Stoics didn't just value solitude. They needed it, because without it, you lose yourself in the crowd. Epictetus said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Why? Because self-growth often requires stepping back, retreating from the noise, and sitting alone with your thoughts. Solitude is not loneliness, it's space for your mind to breathe. It's where the real you gets to speak, without interruption. But let's be real, it's not easy. The average person can't go 5 minutes without reaching for their phone. We fear boredom. We avoid silence. We think something's wrong if we're not stimulated. But here's the truth. The best ideas, the deepest insights, and the strongest character are forged in stillness. Think of all the moments in your life that felt sacred. Those silent drives at night. Those hikes without music. Those times you were alone but didn't feel lonely. That's not emptiness. That's presence. And Stoicism teaches us to lean into that. To not run from silence, but to return to it. Like a well that never runs dry. Let's go even deeper. The greatest minds in history were often shaped by solitude. Einstein would take long, silent walks. Thoreau wrote from a cabin in the woods. Marcus Aurelius wrote meditations during military campaigns, often isolated, surrounded by the weight of the empire. They weren't escaping life. They were understanding it. Now imagine carving out even just 10 minutes a day. No phone, no distractions, just you and your thoughts. You might start to hear things you've been avoiding. Questions like, am I living the life I want? Am I who I pretend to be online? What am I afraid to admit to myself? These are not comfortable questions, but they are the ones that build a meaningful life. So here's a quiet challenge. What would you hear? What would you learn if you let yourself sit in true silence this week? Number 7. Live by principles. Aligning daily actions with Stoic values. There's something deeply satisfying about knowing who you are and living like it. No pretending, no masks, no chasing approval, just clear values expressed through daily action. It doesn't require perfection, it requires consistency. And in a chaotic, opinionated world, living by principles isn't just refreshing, it's revolutionary. Think about it. Most people today are overwhelmed not because they're weak, but because they're misaligned. They say they want peace, but spend hours arguing online. They say they value growth, but avoid discomfort. They want honesty in others, but lie to themselves. This disconnect between what we believe and how we live creates anxiety, confusion, and guilt. But Stoicism offers a compass. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That single sentence cuts through modern noise like a sword. Don't just talk about values, live them. You don't need to wait for the perfect situation, perfect mood, or perfect feedback from others. You just decide. Today, I will act with courage. Today, I will choose self-control. Today, I will be kind, even if no one notices. The Stoics believed that virtue, not success, fame, or wealth, was the only true good. Everything else was secondary. And that's liberating, because it means that no matter what happens outside of you, layoffs, rejection, betrayal, you can still win the inner game. You can still act with integrity. That's the one thing no one can take away. Let's bring this down to earth. Living by principles isn't about becoming some cold, emotionless philosopher. It's about micro-decisions, choosing not to gossip when others do, owning up to your mistake without blaming someone else, being calm when it would be easier to explode. These aren't dramatic moments. They're quiet acts of rebellion in a reactive world. Now pause and think. When was a time in your life you did live like that? Maybe it was when you stood up for a friend when no one else did. Maybe it was when you walked away from a toxic job, even when it scared you. Or maybe it was when you told the truth, even though it cost you something. Those moments live in you. They feel different because they're different. They're aligned. And here's what's fascinating. The more you align your actions with your values, the more peace you feel. Not comfort, not ease, but a deep, unshakable peace. You no longer need to over-explain or overperform. Your life becomes simpler, but more meaningful. So now, ask yourself, what values do you want to be known for, not someday, but today? And if someone followed you around for 24 hours, would your actions reflect those values? That's the final Stoic challenge. Not to live perfectly, but to live principled. If you've made it this far, you're not just watching, you're transforming. These 7 habits aren't quick hacks. They're timeless tools sharpened by warriors, philosophers, and leaders who understood that true power starts with mastering yourself. You don't have to change your whole life overnight, just your next decision. Wake with purpose, reflect with honesty, act with intention. That's how the smarter, stronger version of you gets built. Drop a full score in the comments if you're still here, because that means you're part of the 0.01% who finish what they start. If you're serious about becoming wiser, more grounded, and mentally bulletproof, then make sure to subscribe and join a community that's walking this path with you. Let's keep growing together.